Okay, so let's go ahead and get this kicked off. Rao, are you on the call yet? All right. So while we're waiting for Rao, I will just give some mind candy update, which is that Mike Stay and I have been working on kind of the final piece of the OSLF. So that's operational semantics and logical form. And one of the things that we've needed to produce is as an example of a container beside set where we can collect the results of the formulae. And so one of the most interesting examples is something that is a data structure that supports the linear logic. So we have sort of landed on Q categories as a nice halfway house between category theory and linear logic. And as of Monday, we were able to establish the major elements of the logic. So we have all the usual linear operations, but we also have the quantifiers, which was something that was stymieing us for a few weeks, and so that's incredibly nice. And now we have this nice example where we of a container where we can collect programs or other kinds of data structures that is linear in nature, and that's important because if you look at the way the physical world is organized, if you wanted your mathematics to be grounded on the physical world, it should be grounded on something that's a lot closer to quantum mechanics, which is also linear in nature. So with that, hopefully, Rao, you're here. So I'll let you, cook in that brain candy, to mix my metaphors, and turn it over to Rao.
Yeah, I do want to ask you, did you guys find a name for this container or not yet?
I mean, they're called Q categories. The name in the literature is Q categories.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Very good. So here is the link to this week's update. Give me a second. I'm going to share my screen. So welcome to Community Update 196. The status of the networks is that last week I said that we were running O12.3 on the observer nodes on the mainnet, but now all the nodes on the mainnet are running O12.3, and that has the fix to alleviate the tuple space mismatch error. And then the transaction API fix from O12.2. So that's the main difference. Everything else remains the same, except that the LLVM network is more stable now and is ready for the community to use. I do also want to say on this tuple space mismatch error, what is on the mainnet right now is a fix to alleviate, meaning it just replays a couple more times because this is sort of a unpredictable error and it happens very rarely. So the fix that is on the mainnet with the O12.3 version is that we replay multiple times, couple more times whenever the error occurs and see if the error disappears. But since then, the team has looked into the root cause of that, and it seems like it was coming from a thread safety issue in one of the in the hot store. So I see if you see item 7 down below, there I explain more what has been done. So basically, this is the next level of the patch to the tuple space mismatch error. It's right now in testing. It has been running for several days without the error appearing once we put this fix in. So we'll let it continue to run for a while. And in the next release, whatever that might be, this will probably go in, assuming that this permanently fixes that issue. So that's the update on the tuple space mismatch error. Looks like we're getting close to resolving that. We may already have resolved that, but I'll say that after we run this for several days more. So that, and as far as errors are concerned, now that the tuple space mismatch error is gone, anyway, there is a new cost mismatch error that we saw, and we saw that only one time in the entire network so far. So the team is analyzing that to understand that more. But the good news is that this seems to be contained in context as to, it's not like a huge scope of we don't know where it's coming from. It's very clear where it's coming from. So that's why I think it's a tractable error. And even though we can't readily replicate it, we know that it's related to the cost of the transaction. So it should be easy to figure out what's going on with that. So the team is looking into that. That's where we are with that. Having said that, let me go back to the beginning of the report mainly. So basically what is in the LLVM network now, or what the code base that's in the test net, has a lot of changes, a lot of design changes and extensions and so on and so forth. So the team over the last few weeks has gone through that and kind of rationalized that to say what should go first, what can wait, what needs maybe more work, so we're not going to rush to include that currently. So that separation of concerns or separation of buckets has been done. And the team now is basically taking parts of the LLVM code that have to go onto hard fork 2 and putting them on the hard fork 2 code base, and then doing additional pieces that need to be done based on the design review and the agreements on what is going first and what's going next. So there are new code changes being done, as well as taking what's in the LLVM code base onto the hard fork 2 branch. And the hard fork 2 branch is the one that will be initially targeted for the mainnet. There are a couple of other pieces of strands of work that I had been talking about. For example, Dennis had been working on performance improvement and storage optimization for history using the Radix tree implementation. And Stanislaw had recently started working on the find functionality in the DAG store representation. That also improves performance there. And in particular, Dennis's work actually improves the performance of the leaderless block merge because it basically makes block merge much faster. That's the expectation. We will have more numbers on that once he completely integrates his work into this. But so these two pieces of work are also going to be integrated on the hard fork 2 branch. And once all of that is in there, or even as we get to that integration, once the LLVM leaderless block merge code-based changes are migrated over to the hard fork 2, then the team will start doing tests and refactoring of the tests with this code base to be able to make sure that we cover all the edge cases, and that the tests are catching all the edge cases and that there are no problems. So that's the work that is remaining to be done at this point in time. And the team is working on that. That's the overall structure of how the team is working on and what they're doing. The other couple of points I think it's clear from what I said, the work that Dennis is doing and Stanislaw is doing. So I'll skip and that. NetZipper has been working on simplifying Casper, and this is one of the significant pieces that will be merged onto the hard fork 2 branch, as well as he's been working on making the testnet, LLVM testnet stable. And Tomislav has been working on restructuring the code so that it's modular and everybody can work on their pieces, but in a way that's very simple and elegant to extend and understand for others. In addition, he has his own items to work on, like the the preventing the double spend in the enhanced Rev transfer implementation that he has done, because now Rev transfers on the RCHain network would be much faster than they were before. And the piece of work there that has not been completed is the preventing of the double spend, and he'll be working on that. So all these pieces are going to come together in the next couple of weeks to have a release that that would then become the new leaderless block merge testnet version. So that's what is in the works right now. I think that's all of what I wanted to say. Does anybody have any questions or comments on any of this?
I guess the only comment is that it sounds like these optimizations are, implementing in Scala code that was done in Rolang before. Is that correct?
No, I mean, we're not actually changing anything that was done in Rolang. It just within Scala, between the DAG store and between hot store. So there has been a lot of improvements, incremental improvements to those parts. And then there were some items that were left over that, for example, the item that Stanislav is working on is one that was identified as an issue, but the team didn't get around to that before. Now, the piece that Dennis is working on in terms of the radix tree implementation of history, that's coming from the insights we gained from the work with the hardware vendor as to how they were going to speed up. And then in the collaboration with them, we said, well, how about if we do this? They said, yeah, so there were some measures or metrics done at the time to say that, well, if you do this, this, and this, you will get substantial improvement just within the software without the hardware. So that's the piece that then Dennis started implementing. So it's coming from that, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. In some parts of what Dennis has done, like I said, the actual numbers will be available once we do the integration of his work into the rest of the code base. But the expectation is that block merge would get as much as like a 10x improvement in some cases. That's at least the team's view at this point in time, but we'll have some numbers on that once the integration is done.
Yeah. And with respect, so, and as we've said, there's a bunch of Casper refactoring that was happening as a result of block merge. So, I mean, the reality is that, as we went through the block merge algorithm, the current team got a much better understanding of Casper than the previous team had. And as a result, they were able to see that a lot of code that was in the code base was unnecessary. And so a bunch of that code's been pulled out and or refactored, which will also result in a bunch of performance improvements and overall clarity and maintainability of the code.
Sounds to me like a regular incremental programming incremental prototypes.
Well, I mean, that's what it is. It's it's a rapid development, right? Agile development. That's what we've been espousing for quite some time. Yeah.
Yeah, but what's being done in this process now is that the code structure is being made a lot more modular and clear and simple, so that as we bring on new people, it's easier to bring on people, and they don't have to pull their hair out for 6 months or more, just understanding what is going on in the code base.
Right. That's what we do with each prototype, is we refactor.
Yeah, that's a part of it. But like in this particular case, I can say for a fact that Nutzipper and Tomislav have a much better understanding of Casper. Yeah. Whereas previously, there was a real impedance mismatch between the development team's understanding of Casper and what Vlad and Mike and I were all trying to communicate to them. So it's this is very good news, because it means we're back to the much simpler protocol, which affords us much better performance.
Sweet.
Yeah. Any other comments or questions? Over to you, Greg.
All right, thank you very much. So I want to report that we had our first full board meeting with the new board. The first item of business is that the board elected a president and a secretary, and you guys are stuck with Lilia and myself for the for the next year again. So Lilia has been elected as the secretary to the board, and I have been elected as president. My apologies. You'll have to deal with us for another year. We passed a couple of resolutions, which were largely some housekeeping, but they're related to some other issues which we will discuss in the closed door session. Let's see. The board did go over about 4 hours, which is typical for the first board meeting of the year. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that there are a lot of dependencies that are all stacked one on top of another. And so we really, really need the membership to become aware of the LCA, so the Limited Cooperative Association vehicle, because that is going to play potentially a key role going forward. So the more people can come up to speed on that, the better. And we recognize the collective intelligence of the RCHain community. It's one of the jewels in the crown. So please don't hesitate to dive into that. If people need translations into their native language, we can potentially look into that, because we'll probably need something similar if we do end up engaging that kind of governance structure more directly. So please take a look at that, and we'll have more detailed conversations in the closed door session. Any questions about what I've said so far?
Is there a channel in Discord where we should talk about this, or is this all?
Oh, that's a great question, Jim. Any suggestions as to which channel, or should we open up a new one? Do we have a governance channel? I can't remember.
Yes, we do. So governance channel.
The governance channel is probably the one. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Any other questions or comments about that? Okay. Moving along then. Daryl, do you have the week in review ready?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Greg.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so here's the week in review for last week, October 28th to today, November 3rd. Last Thursday in the Governance Committee, we discussed an AGM 2022 template, adhering better to deadlines, maintaining timelines, better communication with members, possibly creating a web page for better explaining the IOB process with a link to the bylaws, etc. Jim brought up Barry Schwartz as a guide for applying practical wisdom with respect to deadlines and other rules. On Friday, in the Climate Coordination RCast, we discussed an increase in forecasted oil production, Tesla's recent boom, making Elon Musk's individual wealth greater than that of the entire Exxon Corporation, Exxon's hearings before Congress, and a private wall constructed on a beach in Australia. We also discussed news about Facebook, now known as Meta, and concern around their attempt to dominate the mixed reality metaverse, and also discussed volatile disaster preparedness for centralized data centers. On on Monday at the Casper Standup, Greg, I didn't get a chance to copy the text that you gave me.
Oh, no worries. I talked about it at the top of the hour.
Okay, cool. Okay, and then on Tuesday in the communications working group, we discussed responding to the AGM YouTube comments, how to get co-op members more involved in the co-op, and improving our Twitter engagement. On Wednesday, this morning, in the active member hangout, it was Jim, myself, and Camilla. Jim shared his brilliant talk from the Argov conference in Colorado way back when. Then I had to take off halfway through. So Jim, did you and Camilla continue on after that?
Yeah, we had a great discussion, and then Theo joined.
Oh, nice. Good.
And Camilla's coming on board with Rolang Learning, which has been suggested for the RCHain Developer Cooperative to run a boot camp. So she's going to be part of it. We have the new guy, Sydney, who is fluent in Chinese, experienced developer, is coming on board. We recorded a Rolang crash course this morning, which I'll give a link to shortly.
Very cool.
Yes, Sydney is on the call, I think.
Yes, welcome, Sydney.
Greetings.
Glad to be here.
And Raphael is available for crash course training, looking at potential funding, whatever. And I have a call.
All right. So I have some sad news to talk about. So hopefully I won't crack up. So that over the last week, beloved co-op member Gary Coulter passed away last Thursday. And this came as a shock to many of us because he appeared to be well into recovery mode after recent surgery. I just want to say a bit about Gary. So for me, Gary represented a wizened elder in the community who also carried a childlike awe and idealism around the collective intelligence of the open source movement. He understood that power is finite and strength is infinite. And so he carried a strong torch in favor of the infinite strength, of decentralized communities over the finite futility of concentrated centralized power. I don't know if anyone else can carry exactly the same kind of torch, but Gary's infectious, passionate positivity always brightened my own torch during the brief few years that I knew him. The community lost a beautiful person, and we'll miss him dearly. Just so everyone knows, Jim is organizing a donation pot for Rev to be sent to his family, which is a great idea. And you'll probably hear more about that in the members channel on Discord if you'd like to contribute. So we're going to miss you, Gary.
He's been here from the dawn of the spark of RCHain, and a great friend.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's been very active and very passionate about governance issues, like Daryl was saying, and has been, many of us have worked with him on the governance committee for several years now. So, and he learned Rolang, and he did many of those robot things. So he and Jim were just playing with Rolang all the time, and he was doing blockchain art as one of his passions. So.
Yeah. Well, I really found Gary to be quite an inspiration, and the life in Gary that I experienced was a life to be celebrated. So I'm very grateful for his engagement in RCHain. He made the place a lot brighter. So, I ever since my grandmother passed away a couple of years ago, around this time, and I watched how many people celebrated her life, I've thought, well, I hope when I'm passing, people throw a party. And I definitely think that, from what I could see of it, Gary lived a life that was worthy of celebration.
So well said.
All right. I think that's about it for the main topics. There was one other topic in the Casper Standup that I didn't send out to Daryl that had nothing to do, at least on the surface, with the Q categories. But there's an interesting question related to the development of life that is worthy of discussion, and so maybe in another forum or at another time, the RCHain community might be interested in engaging that. Any questions or go ahead?
No, I was saying you need to stay alive until you become alive in our collective intelligence.
Yeah, agreed, 100%, 100%. Well said. Any questions or comments from the community? This is also your debrief. Any thoughts, feelings, stuff you want to take a look at? I know Nora has been following the COP 2021 proceedings. I don't know if anyone wants to make any other comments, but this is your time as well.
Yeah, I would just encourage people to pay attention to what's going on at COP26, which is happening in Scotland right now. There have been some amazing speeches done by youth climate activists from all over the world, especially in the Southern Hemisphere, which gets totally ignored. Not say totally ignored, but more often ignored than what happens in the Northern Hemisphere. So I just encourage people to keep an eye on that. I know that a lot of people think it's a sort of a futile effort, but there is some progress that's being made there. So it's really fascinating and inspiring. So I just encourage people to go on Twitter or YouTube or whatever and search COP26 and watch some stuff.
Very good. Thank you, Nora. Any others?
I would just encourage people who are interested in the development of the RCHain boot camp to contact myself, Bill Kunsch, Raphael, Camilla, or Sydney.
Cool. That sounds great.
And I just wanted to point out that many countries in Europe had a time zone change. They moved their clocks back an hour. So for this Friday, just double check to see if you're interested in attending the Friday closed door session. If you're in Europe, it's probably going to be an hour earlier than usual. So, twice a year, this always gets people messed up. So just be conscientious of the time. But this coming weekend, Sunday, I believe, or actually, I believe the U.S. is changing its. Is it this weekend we're moving back an hour?
I think it's
Yes.
this weekend. So Saturday night the clocks change. So Sunday, you get a day with an extra hour in it.
Okay, so if you're in Europe, the Friday closed door session is probably going to, for you, it's going to be an hour earlier than usual. But next week it'll be back at the usual time.
Okay. Very good. Thanks to all. Please stay safe, stay warm. See you on the other side.